Coming up on Look Today, well, longtime president of the Saratoga City Center, Mark Baker, will run for mayor of Saratoga Springs on the Republican ticket. I've got details. And the Lake George Park Commission has finalized its rental boat safety program. More on that coming up. Plus, Rockmond Record Club delved into the history of David Bowie and prepares for another presentation coming up next week. We've got all these details on Look Today. Welcome everyone. I'm Jay Hood Jackson. This is Look Today. In tonight's program, I sit down with Scott McLean. Now, he's the owner of Stony Creek Ranch Resort. He's here to talk about the newly transformed ranch resort and also why he chose to take the reins of this historical site. I also sit down with Paul Jenkins, and he's the superintendent of Glens Falls City Schools. We're joined by Bobby Yusko. He's the assistant superintendent of business, and they're here. I talk about the school's budget as well as the capital campaign and what that entails. Now, this will be in part one of my interview with them. Plus, we've got your weather for the Tri-North counties, but first, these headline stories. Our lead story, well, longtime president of the Saratoga City Center, Mark Baker, has announced he will run for mayor of Saratoga Springs. Now, he made the announcement yesterday at a press conference at the Pavilion Grand Hotel in downtown, and he will run on the Republican ticket against incumbent Democrat Mayor Joanne Yepsen. Now, the Saratoga Republican Committee announced 6 candidates for city and county-wide positions. While we were at the conference, we spoke to Mark.
It can bring coalition and making sure the council has the ability to work collectively. Also with the leadership style that can bring people together versus divide. And my proven record of integrity and how to do business with integrity and ethics is self-evident.
In other news, well, the Lake George Park Commission has finalized its rental boat safety program. Now, those who want to rent a boat this summer on Lake George will now have to watch a 6-minute safety video and review educational materials. Now, this past summer saw many boating accidents occur on Lake George, including the Log Bay Day tragedy. Well, naturally, this safety program comes at a very crucial time. Well, we spoke to Dave Wick. He's the executive director of the Lake George Park Commission.
Yeah, so what we're finding is sometimes the people that rent boats aren't the most experienced boaters, which makes sense. And so the idea is that we can educate these folks just on the most basic understanding of speed limits on the lake. A lot of them come up and they don't know what a navigational hazard is, what a buoy is, what do they mean, and they might be running up on the rocks, or they might want to take someone water skiing having no idea of what they're doing out there. So this simple program will just help educate those folks to get a better understanding out there.
It is a really important move. Anyone who boats on Lake George will tell you, a lot of those people take these boats, they don't have a clue how to run a boat. So we're going to have more coverage on this story. We're going to speak to Walt Lender of the Lake George Association, who's also involved with this safety initiative. Switching from news to weather. Well, today saw overcast skies. However, temperatures remain in the mid to low 50s. Let's see how the rest of the week is shaping up. For a more detailed look at our weather, we're going to head to the Glens Falls Weather Center for a look at your first forecast.
Well, thank you, Jesse. As we jump into our first look Weather Center forecast right now, we're going to continue to watch high pressure in control across much of the eastern half of the U.S., stretching across portions of the Gulf Coast and just off the coast of Rhode Island. Right now, we're continuing to watch this system split in between by a warm front that's also going to be marching our way. And really, this bigger system will also be overspreading much of the southern half of the U.S. over the coming days, with the warm front pulling up northward and also bringing some showers, maybe even a few thunderstorms back in our direction later on in the week. But temperature-wise, we're going to still see 30s and 40s, a few warmer spots down in the south as that warm front brushes by D.C. They can hang in the 50s overnight. High pressure still doing its best to hang in control here, but really not working out a whole lot, as we're going to still see mostly cloudy skies and a low of 39 degrees. Northerly breeze becomes more north to northeasterly tomorrow. Broken cloud cover, still a high of 65, but all in all, a pretty nice day. We're going to see a sunny start, but cooler start as well, with temperatures starting off in the 30s 40s, and by the 8 to 10 a.m. hours, pulling back up into the mid to even upper 40s for the morning commute. Here comes rain chances. They'll rapidly move back in and hang around throughout the weekend as that sprawled out front continues to slowly swing across the region. So an 80% chance of showers Saturday, Sunday 70% chance of rain. We're going to see it clear out as we go through early next week. Temperatures coming up nicely, bigger warm up as we head through the middle portions of next week, with highs expected to reach well into the 60s and 70s by Tuesday and continue to warm back up over the coming days. Well, that's it from the First Look Weather Center. Now let's get back to you, Jesse.
Thanks, Brian. Well, back to the news. Well, you know we love to cover the Rockmond Record Club. Well, last night there was another edition at the Northshire Bookstore in Saratoga Springs. Chuck Vascanyan, president of the club, delved into some of the seminal hits of the late, great David Bowie. And the songs included Rebel Rebel, Space Oddity, Man Who Sold the World, and, of course, Heroes. He closed the night with an exclusive look into the pivotal album Young Americans. Well, May 16 at Cafe Lena, Rockmond Record Club will feature what many consider one of the best albums of all time, and that would be Asia by Steely Dan. And we spoke to Chuck about this.
Really a perfect album. It's perfectly recorded, great musicians on it. One of the things that's really interesting about Asia is, unlike many albums, it's almost a different band on every single song. And it's so well recorded. It's one of the, it's a reference album for many sound engineers. They use Asia as a way to see if their room is tuned correctly.
And stick around. At the end of the program, we've got a David Bowie treat for you. Up next, I sit down with Scott McLean. He's the owner of the Stony Creek Ranch Resort. He's here to talk about the newly transformed ranch and also why he chose to take the reins, pun intended, of this historical site. I also sit down with Paul Jenkins. He's the superintendent of Glens Falls City Schools. We're joined by Bobby Yusko. He's an assistant superintendent of business, and they're here to talk about the school's budget as well as the capital campaign and what this entails. This will be in part one of my interview with them. But first, if you see news happening, you want to share a story idea, how about join us for an interview? Give us a call on the hotline. The number is 798-8000. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Look Today. I've got a couple of lookouts for tonight. We just found out the SPAC box office is opening this Saturday. SPAC box office opening this Saturday. A rite of spring for sure. And we'll remind you about that later on in the week. And just something else. We've been going around the district talking to a lot of the superintendents of the school districts. And just a reminder about how important it is to vote on school budgets. It's education for our children. Nothing, I think, could be more important. So just a reminder there. A special treat for the lookout tonight. Quick sidebar. I happen to be living in London at the time David Bowie released an album called Heroes. And all I can tell you is that, like so much of his work, it was so far ahead of its time. And this cut in particular, which you heard in every bar in London, you heard it all over the place, really spoke to the potential of each of us as individuals. So Chuck featured it last night in his Rockmond expose of David Bowie, and we're going to take it out with just a little piece of Heroes. Tonight on Look TV at Saratoga City Council. See you tomorrow night.